What is happening, beautiful people of the YouTube? Welcome back, episode 9 I believe of Road to Stage. Now in this video we're going to be going over how to essentially grow your weak points in your physique. Now, first of all, realistically, there's always going to be a reason why you have a lagging muscle group. For example, with myself, my chest and my arms do lag behind the rest of my body. But with a lot of people, you might have muscle groups that are really more apparently more apparently weaker than others, and I'm going to just be talking about how to program around that. And obviously with my upper being a little less muscled out than my lower, I will talk over my lower training clips as well at the side of the screen. But first thing is first. As I said, there is a reason why it's a weak point. Realistically, you're not just born into the world. I'm not born into the world and it's decided, yeah, you're going to have a shit chest, mate. It doesn't really work like that. Now, 1,000,001 different things can play in it. You can obviously look at the genetics sort of side of things. And I've never been like a strong presser per se. I've never really been able to get a good connection, if you like, with my chest. But again, it's something that I am obviously working on. And yeah, basically just going to in this video cover all that sort of stuff. So yeah, first of all, I do think you need to consider obviously things like execution, and things a little bit further down the hierarchy of importance, if you like things like exercise selection, volume, frequency. But first of all, it really is bang on important that the execution is right. And how can you do that? You need to watch over your training clips. You need to be analysing your training clips accurately, or if you're unable to do that / don't want to do that, you need to get someone to do that for you, realistically. So yeah, I am going to go over my upper clips. As I said, I'm going to sort of point out little, tips and tricks with regards to training, specifically here. I have upper, just going to go over that right now. So let's get in it. So first up, we have lying lateral raises. I've got it right here in front of me as well so that I can watch it in real time. Realistically, I have opted for a lying lateral as opposed to like a standing. I do have a seated lateral raise, again with a back support, so I do that single arm on my push day, but got that back support there for just that bit of stability. You can brace against the bench. Realistically here, you want to be thinking about driving out with your elbows, leading with the elbows rather than the wrists, sort of up and out, not just up, not just out. Kind of around about that 45 degree sort of angle. Again, side delt training, it's pretty self-explanatory really, but yeah, that is how we are running lateral raises. Next up, we do have the Nautilus overhead press, and now this is something I was speaking about on my story with regards to maybe using machines that for reasons that they're maybe not intended to. And although this is a shoulder press, you will see I am sat very far down the pad, and it almost, if you pay attention to the path of motion that I am taking while pressing, is almost like more, it's not really like solely an incline chest press. You're never going to be able to just to make it incline chest and just take your front delt straight out of it and put a sole bias on the clavicular fibers of your chest. But realistically, this is like a kind of top line kind of fryer, if you like. And what I'm thinking about here, as I say, with regards to chest being my weakest maybe body part, alongside triceps, really, I'm just thinking about genuinely driving my arm across my sternum, literally driving your upper arm across your sternum, the literal function of the pec. And I get a good connection off of this. I come off of it with a pump. I come off of it feeling the target muscle. And again, these aren't sole indicators that stimulus is occurring, proper good stimulus. But it is, like a it's not like a sole indicator, but it's sort of like a telltale kind of factor. Realistically, you know, the pump isn't everything, you shouldn't chase the pump, but realistically, being accurate and yeah, just basically doing what the muscles function is, you're going to be able to feel it a lot more, and you're going to be able to get that connection that you maybe once didn't have. So yeah, that is what we have for sort of incline chest stroke high incline shoulder press. We have there for the Nautilus Explode. Then moving on to Nautilus leverage press. Nearly got that wrong there. We've got a 4 repper here. I'm going to actually take the load down a little bit next time we run this, as again I just want to focus on being really accurate with my chest work. Again, not chasing a pump at all. Realistically here, it's getting really heavy in the lengthened. Again, that's what you realistically want ideally on paper from a chest press. Again, your chest is going to have the best leverage in that lengthened position, and again, sort of placing that chest press or upper clavicular biased chest press stroke shoulder press, high incline press, whatever you want to call it, before that's heavier in the shot makes more sense from a programming standpoint. On paper, realistically, because it's obviously easier to get your muscles shot when they are fresher. But yeah, literally here, focusing on driving across that midline of the pec. Again, that is realistically the function, as I say, and you're going to be getting a lot more out of your movements when it comes to, you know, especially stuff like chest, but it's maybe hard to feel you know, contractions taking place if you really focus on driving your arm across. As I say, that is a function of your pec. And again, you know, it's not a sole indicator that stimulus is taking place, but again, it's just a good sort of idea that you are being accurate with your training. So yeah, then we go into another chest movement. It is the pec deck. Again, here focusing on bringing your elbow, squeezing your elbows together, not actually just like bringing your hands together, because realistically you can bring your hands together just by going like this and you're getting literally zero chest at all. You see here I'm actively squeezing my biceps together, squeezing my elbows together, whatever cue you want to use, almost taking the wrists, almost taking from the elbow down to your hand out of it. Realistically, you could look at, you know, pec decks that don't actually have handles, and I do actually quite enjoy them myself. There's a Nautilus one, Nautilus Nitro, maybe, I believe, as it does obviously take the lower arm out of it. You could look at that and be like, yeah, it's more optimal, but realistically here, most people won't have the luxury of that kit. So what we're focusing on here is literally, as I say, driving that upper arm across the sternum. Again, the function of the pec, getting that good connection whilst also still remaining very intense with my training work. So yeah, then we'll start with, you know, start into the back stuff. And again, you can, you know, make arguments for placing back stuff ahead of, you know, push stuff within an upper session. But again, I think my argument would be you need a lot more stability for pressing, and especially, you know, within a diet phase when you are, you know, X amount of weight down, you're already going to be on the back foot from a stability sort of standpoint. So I would, you know, opt for pushing stuff first, even if your back is weaker than you know, chest, shoulders, triceps. So yeah, literally here, the main focus here is literally driving that elbow into the back pocket, pulling with the elbow as well, not just pulling with my hand. Again, I come off of this with my lats like genuinely feeling like they're on fire. And again, I can say it all the time, like that is not obviously the sole indicator, but again, it is a good sort of, you know, telltale sign that, you know, you are training accurately. And as you can see here, you can identify that I am training intensely as well just by the training clips. And again, it's obviously something that you need to, you know, as I say, you need to review your own training clips if you want to be making sure that your training is, you know, kept to that high standard. And again, there's always stuff you can improve with your training. And again, I think it sort of starts with the recognition that your training can actually improve in the first place. And it kind of takes like a you can almost take a hit to the ego, being like, oh shit, I could be doing better here. But realistically, you need to put your ego aside and just understand that your training can improve. And realise that it's going to only be positive for you. You know, picking apart your own training or getting someone to pick apart your training for you, and then obviously be able to, and thus be able to make it as good as it realistically can be, again, which then obviously in turn elevates your potential for results. So yeah, that is single arm pull down. Then moving into the paramount row, no buddy rows, we're not ragging weight about, we're getting a good connection whilst obviously staying really fucking intense within the set. So again, obviously here the goal is scapular protraction, retraction, but obviously you're going to get a little bit of low back as well here, as there is no chest pad. But yeah, literally driving back with the elbows, using literally almost just thinking with your back work, thinking that your hands are literally just hooks. You're not pulling with your hands. You're not pulling with anywhere from your elbow up to your hand. Well, it kind of starts from your elbow realistically, but anywhere from your elbow down, you're not pulling from there. You're pulling with your elbow. Again, it's going to help. That's a cue I think it helps a lot of people when it comes to back training, you know, being accurate. I think you obviously pull work is probably the hardest out of everything realistically to be like super accurate with. And again, it's really apparent realistically when you see that a lot of people's lagging muscle groups are the back. It's a common thing. But yeah, that is nobody rows sort of in a nutshell. Then we go into a lat pull down, you know, sort of lat bias. We're realistically not getting much scapular protraction, retraction here, but that is not the goal. The goal is to fry my lats here. I say fry my lats as if it's like a finisher. Again, I hate that when people say, oh yeah, I'm going to go in for a finisher. What's the point in a finisher? Straight sets are always going to be superior than, you know, like finishers, whatever that actually means. But yeah, going into lat pull down, taking a little bit of too much maybe of a lean back here. Realistically, should be probably sat a little bit more upright. But as you can see, it's literally just movement of the elbow here, dragging back with the elbow, pulling with the elbow, as always with your pull work. Again, making sure you're super accurate with that you know, pull work, as I say. So yeah, that is me taking you through my upper session. Now, when it comes to programming of your weaker muscle groups, again, you're probably you would have probably seen my story today when it comes to, you know, pushing the boat out with volume. Again, there's going to be reasons, as I say, as to why you have lagging muscle groups. Again, as I say, that was just me going over execution with, you know, my lagging muscle group, which is chest. There's also things you need to take into consideration with regards to programming. How much volume are you giving this muscle? Are you giving it enough to, obviously, are you giving your muscle enough stimulus so that it will, you know, take that response and then grow from it, or are you maybe doing too much to the point where it can't recover? You're maybe just trying to throw the kitchen sink at it because it maybe just won't grow. So yeah, as I was saying, there is always a reason as to why, you know, a muscle group is lagging. It's not just, you know, decided since you were at birth that you're going to have a weak X, Y, or Z. And another thing that you can take into consideration is obviously volume with your training, as I was saying. Now, you will have seen my story today if you follow the Instagram, and I was kind of talking about pushing the boat out with volume. Now, when it comes to, you know, lagging muscle groups, one of the common things that's going to either be at either end of the scale realistically is if you're doing too much volume, you're not going to be able to recover from that, and again, that's going to, you know, hold back the sort of progress that you can, you know, make within that muscle group. And the other flip side is the not enough volume. You're not giving your muscle enough stimulus, which is kind of more sort of common nowadays with the whole fatigue sort of management brigade. But yeah, don't be afraid to push volume, especially with muscle groups like arms. You're going to be able to, you know, withstand as if you're just going to be getting away with it. You're going to be able to, you know, give your arms, you know, stuff like that, a lot more volume, side delts, you know, stuff like that, a lot more volume than you actually think realistically. And now when it comes to volume as well, like pushing maximum recoverable volume realistically, is that a good thing? Again, it's kind of context dependent realistically. I wouldn't go for it unless you're so your sole life purpose is just bodybuilding, and you don't do anything with your life that's not bodybuilding. That's not me slagging people, that's just like, kind of just advice, because realistically you will have mixed days of expenditure, and normal people will, realistically, and again that will then impact training, and you're more likely to run up fatigue, need more frequent deloads, etc., if you are constantly pushing maximum recoverable volume. Now, I do think, as I say, it is good to push the boat out a few times within your sort of training career, especially within your early years as well. But yeah, like that's just kind of my take on volume. With regards to where you place it in the session, again, as I was saying, with chest and back, I would always put push and work first, just from a stability sort of standpoint. Now, if your lagging muscle group is, say, arms, for example, it's not going to take away from the rest of your session putting that at the start. That's what I run for push pull, and obviously I have my own dedicated arm day as well. So for push I run biceps at the start, and for pull I run triceps at the start. It's not taken away from either session. They're not taken away from each other's sessions, and they're not taken away from within their own session as well. So yeah, I do think it's obviously important to understand where you're placing it in the session as well, because realistically, as you go on throughout the session, each set becomes less and less productive. There's not, obviously that sounds a little bit more dramatic than it realistically is, but that's just how it is, looking at it from like a sort of objective standpoint. And now all of this, you could have the perfect program, the perfect execution. You could literally have everything that was spoken about being literally bang on perfect, but if you're not nailing the external basics, the stuff outside of the gym, like eating to a consistent meal plan, and sleeping at least 8 hours a night, realistically 8 hours sleep opportunity a night, you're not going to realistically be able to maximise the progress to the standard that you want to. And I do think obviously it does kind of come down to that, how you do anything is how you do everything sort of thing, and it needs to obviously mean something to you to want to progress within your physique, within your training. And again, that's what me and Brandon, we speak about on the Inside the Process podcast all the time. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. What people say about that, it kind of speaks for itself, I think. But yeah, what we kind of speak about on that all the time is just the stuff that we do with eating, the stuff that we do with recovery. It's all just a byproduct of wanting to improve your training. And if you want to improve your training to that high standard, as we say, you need to be on top of stuff like your meal plan. You need to be on top of stuff like your sleep, sleep hygiene, just everything surrounding recovery as well. So yeah, as I was saying, literally all of that stuff we went over is near enough useless if all these little variables aren't getting nailed. And obviously, again, you will have seen it with the last video if you've watched that. If you've not, go check it out. The day in the life video, where I was sort of picking apart, properly dissecting training clips. And again, I had a message from a boy saying about how like he maybe have never even looked at his training like that. And again, for me to be able to open people's eyes to that is obviously a good sort of feeling. But again, that's the sort of level of detail that you need to be accurately as well, heavy on the accurately analysing your training too. And if you can't do that, again, you're holding yourself back. And that's not me trying to slag anyone, that's not me trying to put pressure on people, but that's just the truth. Realistically, if you can't accurately analyse your training, you are kind of holding yourself back, realistically. And obviously, like, that is the standard that I accurately analyse my training to, obviously alongside sending training clips over to my coach Josh, and as well as obviously that's the standard that I hold clients to as well with training clips. So yeah, it's just a bit of a short and a sweet video, but I do think it is kind of straight, concise, to the point, a little bit of a difference, one sort of taking you out of the my day-to-day life, training, food, full days in the eating, you can tell it's getting late, full days of eating, days in the life, etc. A little bit more of like a kind of, not I say education, but just a little bit of a food for thought with regards to lagging muscle groups. So yeah, that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. As always, like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. And as I say, check out the Inside the Process podcast. It's just longer form, me and myself and Mr. Brandon Docherty, going at it with literally conversations regarding everything within the process of bodybuilding, Q&As, etc, etc. We may even be getting some special guests, and you know, the sort of pool that we have for people to get on is pretty cool as well. So yeah, make sure to check that out if you haven't already. But until then, I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.